All right, good morning, everybody. I've gotten a lot of questions about how exactly I do my scrap blanket with the black borders in between, and I figured I would just do a quick tutorial video about what my techniques are so that I could refer people to this instead of typing it all out on Ravelry multiple times. So without further ado, we're basically going to have 4 videos in this series. The first one is going to be the base squares, followed by connecting squares, and then main squares, and the last one is going to be how I deal with ends and what the back side of my blanket looks like. I'm posting this today in lieu of a normal podcast because I'm currently on vacation, and there's a lot of stuff in here that's probably going to seem really basic, and you're probably already going to know it if you've done mitered squares or a scrap blanket before, but I figured I'd put it in anyway in case for some people it's their first blanket, or so that you don't have to go and look up another tutorial on a particular technique that I reference. Hopefully this is helpful, and I will see you guys next week. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright everybody, welcome today, and I'm going to show you guys how I knit my scrap blanket. I have gotten a lot of questions about how exactly I make the black sort of lining work and what I do to functionally add rows in here while still doing the mitered squares. So to start off with, I want to show you guys a couple of things. First of all, the edges of the blanket have very defined stitches, okay? These are slip stitches. If you've done mitered squares like this before, if you've done a scrap blanket before, you know what this is. And that's where you pick up on the edges of your squares. You pick up to knit your new squares. When I finish my blanket, I want to go back along the cast-on edges, then up the sides of the blanket, and then across the top and down again, and I'm going to knit a black I-cord border to sort of finish up the whole blanket. So for that reason, on my cast-on edges, I cast on specifically to make, let me see, there we go, these sort of bigger loops in the cast-on edge that I could pick into just like I do at the slip stitches on the edge of the blanket. There we go. So first I'm going to start by showing you how I cast on. And obviously the first thing that you need is your yarn and your needles. Now when I do my squares, I do a 49 stitch square, okay? And it doesn't matter how many stitches you use. I use a 49 stitch square, and I use size 1 needles, sock weight yarn, and that gets me squares about this size, which are about 3 inches across and 4 inches diagonally, which the diagonal measurement matters a bit more because of the way that this blanket works. But I have a very, very tight knitting tension. So if you want to get squares that size, you probably don't need to use that many stitches. And if you want them to be bigger, you can probably just use 49 stitches like I do, and then just maybe use bigger needles, or honestly, it'll probably be bigger anyway. So I start off with a slip stitch, and I'm basically going to do a basic long tail cast on. I am not going to go over how to do the long tail cast on. There are plenty of wonderful tutorials on that. But the difference is that I knit over both needles. And again, this is to get that loose edge that I can pick up stitches from. So I'm just going to go ahead and cast on 49 stitches. I just do it right over both needles, just like you would do your normal long tail cast on. I just do it over both needles. So I'm going to go ahead and cast on 49 stitches, and I will come back and see you again when I have finished that. Okay, so I now have 49 stitches cast onto my needles, and all that I am going to do is I still have them over the 2 needles, so I'm going to scrunch them up so that they're all past the base of the needles, and the reason for that is this is a little more difficult to do if they're stuck on the edge, and I'm going to push the shorter needle out. Okay, so I've got this needle farther in, and I'm just going to hold on to that one and pull this one like this. So now I just have some loose 49 cast on stitches. Now, you're going to start knitting, and normally, if you were to do a mitered square like this, you would just knit the first row. But the trick is, essentially, instead of knitting the first row and creating that garter base, you're going to start right away with your patterning only on your base squares. And remember, this is how you're going to do your base squares. It's going to be different once you start with the black borders. So, I'm going to start immediately with my patterning. You're going to slip the first stitch as if to purl, so the yarn should be in front. Take it off, okay. Then your held yarn, just move it to the back so that you can start knitting. And you're going to knit 23 stitches. Now here's how I got 23, in case you're doing something that is not a 49 stitch block. The way that I got this is, I know that I'm going to have 3 center stitches because I'm going to do a triple decrease in the middle. So I need to split my block so that half of it is on the left of those 3 center decreases and half is on the right. So I have my 49 stitches. 49 minus 3 is 46, divided by 2 is 23, so I'm going to knit 23 stitches. Now, actually I'm going to be knitting 22 because I slipped this first one, but I'm going to have 23 work stitches on the side. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, so now I'm going to do a triple center decrease over these next 3 stitches. And what you do is you slip 2 stitches together, oops, as if to knit them. So you basically put your needle in like you're going to knit 2 together. Okay, pull them off the needle. Then you knit the next stitch. And then you go back and take those 2 stitches that you slipped and pull them over the stitch that you knit. And what you end up with is this center decrease. Oop. So you're decreasing 3 stitches, but you end up with the middle stitch on top. So then I'm going to knit the next 23 stitches. Now, when you're knitting these blocks, every single row that you do, you're going to start by slipping the way that we talked about, and you're going to end it by knitting through the back loop. Okay, so if you give me 1 second, I will be at the end here. Okay, so I've knit 22 stitches, and I'm going to knit my 23rd through the back loop. Perfect. Turn around. Now, on your wrong side rows, you're going to do the same thing. Slip as if to purl, the yarn in front, put the yarn in the back, around the stitch so that you can knit. Okay. And you're going to knit your 22 stitches because you just slipped the first one. And when you get to that center stitch, you're going to purl it. And all that will do is give you that nice defined ridge up the center. Now, I don't count my stitches after the first 2 rows because it is, you really don't even need to, you just follow along. But I count, make sure that I have the 23 on either side, the first 2 rows, because if I've done it where, I think I went too far, I've gotten that wrong. I've done it like, 25 and 21 or something, and I didn't notice until the very end, and because I'm just going automatically until the very end, I had to rip the whole square out. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, I went 1 too far, 23. Now, the reason I could tell that I had gone too far is because this stitch, this one where you already did the center decrease, will feel a little bit thicker because it, has 3 coming out of it. So you're going to purl that one. And then you're going to finish knitting your row and knit through the back loop. You are going to follow this same technique until the very end. So as you go, you're going to be decreasing by 2 stitches every round, or every other round, I suppose. So on this next time around, I'm going to be knitting fewer stitches, doing my center decrease, and knitting fewer stitches. And as you go, it's just going to decrease. So again, don't forget to knit through the back loop. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this square, and then I will see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, and I just decided to come back and film the very end of making this square. As you can see, we have this nice defined ridge up the center. This ended up looking a little bit Christmassy. It's kind of weird. The cake itself is like all grays and reds, but then when I wound it up, it was like the reds are just on the ends and the grays in the middle. I'm not really sure how to do that, but anyway, so I've only got a few stitches left, and I'm just going to show you guys the last few rows so you can get a hang for it. It's crazy hot here right now, so the yarn is like sticking in my fingers. So you slip as if to purl, then put your yarn in the back. I'm going to knit at this point 3 stitches. Slip 2 together as if to knit. Knit 1. Pass those 2 slip stitches over. Knit 3 stitches. Oops. This is really bizarre. So right now I'm watching myself knit through a camera lens, and the timing is off, and so is messing me up. So anyway, slip as if to purl, put your yarn in the back again, and then knit 3 stitches. Purl 1. Knit 3. Oh, this is so weird. I don't know why I didn't have trouble before. Knit through the back loop. Slip as if to purl with the yarn in front, then put your yarn in back, knit 2 stitches, slip 2 together as if to knit, knit 1, pass the 2 slip stitches over, knit 2, knit through the back loop. Slip as if to purl with yarn in front, put your yarn in the back, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, knit through the back loop. Okay, so when we get closer to the top, what's going to happen is your pattern that you keep following as you do this, and you can sort of see what I mean by how I don't count after the first few rows, because it's so obvious. You have 1 stitch before your center decrease, and that's where you do your next decrease. But we're about to reach the point where you're not going to be able to follow this same basic pattern anymore, and that's the point which I wanted to film. So you slip it as if to purl. There we go. With your yarn in front, like usual. Then put your yarn in back. Now, if you see here, you won't be able to knit that 1 stitch, because then you won't be able to do your triple center decrease. So you don't knit. You just do your decrease. There we go. And then you knit through the back loop. So then when you go back across, you're going to slip as if to purl. Put your yarn in front, but then you see you can't knit this stitch because that's your center decrease. That's your center decrease stitch. So you don't actually have to put your yarn in front this time. You just purl the stitch and then you knit through the back loop. And then this is going to be your last row here. You can't slip this stitch because this stitch has to be part of your decrease. So this is going to mess up the side slip stitches at the very top here. And we're going to talk about that when we get to picking up from it, but you have to make sure you pick up that very top stitch. It won't look like a stitch, but it is one, so pick it up. So I slip 2 as if to knit, including the one that my yarn is coming out of. I knit through the back loop, and I pass those 2, oops, this yarn is splitting all over the place. Okay, then I pass those 2 slip stitches over. So I basically have a triple center decrease here that became my bind off stitch. And all you have to do, grab my scissors, is cut it. If you've ever bound anything off with just one stitch, you know what I'm doing. There you go. Okay, so this is your square. And the next time you see me, we're going to talk about how to do the next row up. So how it is that you are going to add, these are what I call the connecting squares or the second row squares, okay? So we're going to talk about adding these and how to put the black borders in, and I will see you then. Bye!